Hi, this is Christopher James with All Things Branson, and today we are at the, well, it was the Moon River Theater, I'm not quite sure what it's called now, with Rick Thomas. Hello, Rick.
How you doing?
You're doing great. So good to get to talk to you out here at the, what is the name of the theater now?
The Andy Williams Performing Arts Center and Theater.
Isn't that nice?
Yes.
Yeah.
It is a performing arts center, so to speak. We have a theater, and you know what it is? Andy, of course, built this theater, and Moon River is all about his success and his career, and Moon River being the song that it is and how epic it was for his career.
Right.
But as we've progressed forward, and we are trying to tie in so many other great entertainers from across the world that can come out to the theater, the Performing Arts Center was a better way to go. Regarding
it sounds good too.
Regarding everybody involved, and it's the one theater in town that really is that kind of style theater. It's truly beautiful.
Because you guys do a lot of like one-off shows. You have some people that come in and just do a weekend or two, I've noticed, or special events out here. So that's unusual in Branson.
And in fact, most of the time, those shows are attended by local people that live here. It's not really the public who, the tourists that come into town to see these entertainers. Yeah. It's become a local.
See, I think that's good. We were going to open a comedy club here in town a while back, and that was going to be for locals because, it's hard to advertise comedians that would just be there for a week.
Yes.
And do that. Yeah, I came out and saw Terry Fader, I think last year or the year before, was out here. But I want to talk to you about your show. Is this your second or third year in Branson?
It's the third season.
Third season. Yeah, I remember when you, you were here when Andy was still performing, right?
No.
Oh, no?
No, Andy had passed, actually, and I was called on behalf of the theater itself and asked if I would come out and bring my show to Branson. I'd had my show in Vegas for 15 years, and lucky enough to become the #1 show for families in Las Vegas. Yeah. And that being the case, I think they felt that would fit this. I don't even sing. So I thought, wow, they're asking me to come in and fill Andy's shoes.
Right.
And he was such the crooner. How am I supposed to do this with a magic show?
Right, right.
And they just felt that this was the production that needed to be here.
Had you been to Branson before?
Okay, I will say yes, but just driving through.
I see.
I have a line in my show that says, I never planned on being here. I never planned on performing here, nor did I ever plan on driving through this area.
Right.
And it's a little bit of a play on just having a little fun with Branson. But I do tell people that I had an interview recently, and they asked me the question, what's the difference between Las Vegas and Branson?
They don't know the difference.
Well, they do, but he thought he'd be kind of funny and ask me and said, so what's the difference? I go, well, I'll tell you the true difference to me personally, because I never anticipated being in Branson or staying here at great length because of my other shows across the world.
Right.
I've made more true friends in Branson the past 2 years than I ever did in my stay in Las Vegas. And it is the quality of life that I'm enjoying more than anything. You can perform anywhere in the world, but when you make choices as far as, life is short, we have very little time, and when you choose what you're going to do with your time, it's very important to me. And and I've gotten to a point in my career where I've had my successes. I've done so many amazing things in my career, and now I'm going to do something for me.
Well, there you go. You see, I talked to Andy years ago, and he pretty much said the same thing. He said that he had traveled so much, and in Branson he could go home every night, and he had a home base now, and made a lot of friends here. In fact, I just interviewed a few other entertainers. They say the same thing, because Branson's kind of unique, where people, I don't know, they feel like they really know you after seeing the show. They're your friend now.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's a little unnerving for some people, because I've worked with some entertainers that just come into town for a week or so, and it's strange to them when people come up after the show and they treat you like a brother or something. It's kind of unusual, I think.
I've always, at the end of my show, gone out and shaken hands with every single person that I can possibly do so who had seen the show.
Whether they want to or not.
Yes, I force myself upon them.
Welcome to Branson.
But in Branson, you're swarmed. And even the entertainers, I was amazed that when I got here, there were other entertainers who actually called me up and said, Rick, what can we do to help you out? I'm like, what?
Yeah, I know.
That doesn't happen in Vegas.
No,
it's a dog-eat-dog world. And out here, we still compete with each other. But at the same time, every week we see each other in some way or form. We have something here in town called Mixers, and everybody goes out to these events, and we entertain for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And I see everybody who is anybody in town every week, and we all shake each other's hands. We put our arms around each other. That camaraderie is pretty amazing as entertainers in Branson.
It is. Now, before I was here, there was a huge amount of magic shows in town. And, you know, I'm a magician also, and I get very frustrated when people compare the different types of magic, because I say it's the same as comparing different types of music, classical music versus rock versus grunge. Because what you do is a lot of illusions in the show.
Yes.
Where I do a lot of stand-up comedy that happens to have a trick in it. Very, very different things. And so I get frustrated when people compare them. So constantly at the show, they'll say, well, so-and-so used to be here, Brett used to be here, or, you know, whoever used to be here. And there were a huge amount of magic shows. Then they all kind of went away. And then when I came to town, it was me and 2 other guys. And I think only one of them is still performing here. But now we're having like a big influx again.
I think that's because I came.
You know what?
People follow me. I'm not saying. I'm just saying. It fascinates me that I bring my show into a town, and then all of a sudden, there's just like they start popping up.
You know, you're going to think this is a joke, but this is the true story. This is what I tell everybody, because they ask me, why are there so many magic shows suddenly popping up? And I said, it's all Rick's fault, because you came here. Because mine isn't a magic show. Mine is stand up, and I do like a few tricks in it. But you came here and you had huge success, and I started seeing your name everywhere. You know, one of the most entertaining shows in town, best family show, all this. It was everywhere. It was on the internet, and I said, I think it's a mistake, sort of, because everyone is going to see this and think they can make it here and come in and try to do their style of show. I totally blamed you for it, just so you know. So.
You know, that was an interesting comment you just made, saying they think they can make it here. Because the same thing happened in Vegas. Las Vegas, let me go back just a bit. In Las Vegas, there's so many magicians who've come to me and they'd say, Rick, how did you make it in Vegas? Why is your show such a huge success? And I said, because I didn't come to Vegas to make it. I already had a show. I already had success. I believe that Vegas is not a place for people to go try to be something.
Right.
They should already be something before they get there. And there's so many magicians who go into town and they'll say, what does it cost to get this going? Well, a lot of money, but a lot more talent.
Yes.
You have to have a good show.
Right.
You have to rock. I mean, when people walk out, it's either they love your show and word of mouth is they're going to come back, or you're gone in a month. Branson, on a smaller scale, is still the same way. It's still a town where you have great entertainment, and I don't think, and I've seen it. I've seen people come to Branson and try to put a show together to make something of themselves. And there are certain places across the country where you should have a show first before you get there.
Right.
and I think that when I came into Branson, because of my show's success in Vegas, it kind of worked. But I was also very worried that, you know, you say Las Vegas, people don't want Vegas in Branson.
Right.
It's not that type of town. It is a very family-oriented situation, and they don't want anything that isn't a wholesome.
Right.
And for that reason, I knew that my show would work. People didn't. I'd tell them I was from Las Vegas, and they'd say, go home.
Yeah.
You know, literally, like, they look at me going, and why are you promoting that? Right. You know? And then when they saw the show, they realized, okay, we get it. It was probably the tamest show in Vegas. Because it's about families. It's about entertaining and making sure that everybody from 3 years of age to 93 is going to love the show.
Right. Yeah. No, that's very true. I see a lot of performers, because I do quite a few cruise ships. And I see performers that think they can just get an agent, go on a cruise ship, and figure out their show when they get there. It doesn't work that way. I don't know how you got started. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I started out doing anything I could. Nursing homes, I worked at restaurants doing close-up, then got into comedy clubs, worked in the Catskills, and kept fine-tuning the act and finding what worked with different audiences. And I think a lot like you, I would do a church in the morning, okay? And then in the afternoon, I might do a corporate event. And then in the evening, I was working at little bars and stuff, but doing the same show, basically with all three, you know? And it worked out. Now, do you have the classic, I got a magic kit as a kid story? Because I don't.
No. I grew up in ballroom dancing. My parents taught ballroom dancing, and my grandparents taught ballroom dancing. My sister and I actually were the United States junior ballroom dancing champions for a few years in a row. And it was a big deal in my family's life. We grew up in that industry where we went across the country and competed in these dance competitions. And I watched magicians. I don't even know who I saw on television, but I lived next to Disneyland growing up, about 30 minutes away. I loved the world of fantasy. I never wanted to grow up. I wanted to be Peter Pan my whole life. And when I was at the dance competitions, I got a hold of a deck of cards. And I'm 12, 13 years old. About 7 years of age is when I started, but 12 or 13 years old, I'm underneath these tables while they're competing in ballroom dancing, and I'm doing card tricks under the tables, trying to keep myself entertained. I'm so bored at these competitions. And once I did that, and I worked on my competitions, my magic, I thought to myself, well, I think I know it well enough to start performing. Mm-hmm. And at that point, in fact, my first large, because of Disneyland being close, I went there and tried out, and I was the first solo entertainer ever at the Disneyland Hotel, and I was there for 2 years with my own show, and also the youngest they'd ever hired.
How old were you then?
17.
Oh, wow.
Never did they have a solo performer doing their own thing on their outdoor stages next to the dancing waters at the Disneyland Hotel.
Yeah.
Big deal.
It is a big deal.
So I was thrilled, and that was the beginning. It's not to say that there aren't ups and downs in the business. It's tough.
Very much so.
It's so tough. And then I went on cruise ships and performed across the world in that manner, and then performing art centers. And actually, I did fairs. I did fairs across the United States and Canada.
That is so hard.
I did over 50 fairs. I'm talking Ohio State Fair, Indiana State Fair, California, Klondike Days in Canada, Stampede, all these amazing places. And you're performing on outdoor stages.
Like every few hours.
For people who just walk by. I never in my life, I've been amazed. I counted up the shows I performed. I've done over 24,000 shows in my career. And I never missed one show except for one. I've always made my show, and I was doing shows at a fair in California, and it was so hot that day. I did 4 shows. I went on stage to do my second show, and I couldn't walk up on the stage. Mm-hmm. And they said, "You're dehydrated." They took me straight to the hospital, put an IV in me, and I said, "I got to get back for my other shows." They go, "Uh-uh." I go, "Uh-huh." They had the IV in for me for like 2 hours, took it out, got back up on stage and did 2 more shows. But they said, "You are crazy." Yeah. But at the same time, those fairs will wipe you out.
Yes, they will. Because I did the same thing. I did Ohio State Fair. I did the Penn State Fair. And it is really tough because those people are brutal.
Yeah, they're brutal.
They're walking around with their elephant ears, and they'll tell you, if something isn't good. And we had to do 4 or 5 shows a day, and they wanted something different each time. They say at some of the fairs, we get a lot of the same people that come and hang out all day. So, and you almost want to do something different. You don't want people, giving you a hard time at your show, heckling you like crazy, which I learned to handle hecklers when I was like 15. But I had to bring in a partner in my show. I said, well, you do, I think there were 30 minutes. I said, you do 15 minutes, I'll do 15 minutes. It helps me break up the material. And then I went from there to cruise ships. That's different because a lot of people tell us we're spoiled here in Branson. How many shows do you do a week? Roughly? 6 shows a week. I have a friend on cruise ships. We do 12 at the showboat. And he said, you're lucky because I do 1 night a week on a 7-day cruise. And I can't change my material. I'm so afraid to change it when I know something works. I have to stick with it. Where we get to do multiple shows, so you can try new material. And I've heard about some of the new stuff you might have coming up. I won't spoil it.
Absolutely.
But that's where we're very lucky here in Branson, I think, is that we can work on new material all the time.
Yeah. I had 12 shows a week in Las Vegas. We did an 8 o'clock and a 10 o'clock show. But in Branson, you know what? It's just the way that plays out here in town. There aren't very many shows. The showboat works in that way because you go out on consecutive cruises throughout the day.
It's a smaller theater than what you have here.
But here with this 2,000-seat theater in Branson, pretty much you do the one show at night, 8 o'clock. That's pretty much what you're going to do.
Yeah. Do you like doing a big room like that?
Yes, I do. I really appreciate it. I'm very comfortable with it. I've just finished doing Sydney Opera House in Australia. That's 3,000 seats. I did the Coliseum, Caesars. That's 4,200.
The Coliseum in Rome.
4,200 seats.
4,200.
And we sold that out. But I don't think a magic show, anything over 5,000 seats is good.
Right.
Magic is very visual. I know, using the name David Copperfield, he did a show in Russia, and they did it in front of a 10,000 seat arena. And actually the people were furious because if it's a rock concert, the music helps carry not being able to see the person.
Right.
But with magic, they didn't pay to see a person to watch a video screen.
Yes.
So you have a point where it just gets too big. I love 3,000 seats.
Yeah.
I love 3,000 people. It's just but at the same time, 1,500 people or 1,000 has its own style as well.
Right.
And then in Branson in the off season when it's a little slow and there's 200 people in the audience.
And then people write, there was hardly anybody in the audience.
Yeah, there's hardly anybody in the audience. And I can take my mics off and just talk to them personally and say, hey, how you doing tonight? So I can shake hands with everybody in the audience before I even start the show.
Do a trick for each one. That's what I say.
Thanks for coming to the show this evening.
Here's one for you.
Here's one for you.
Well, I was friends with Darren Romeo when he was here, and he was at Welk, and that's a huge theater as well. And he said, I would have 300 or 400 people, and then the reviews would be the theater was almost empty. And he said most shows in town would kill for 300 or 400 people.
Absolutely.
It's the venue.
Absolutely.
It's
and
crazy.
Even Andy, he had this theater built, and there was a point where he was filling the theater, and I know that as time went on, there were times in the season where it was just smaller houses of people, and he himself said, I'm only going to work a few months a year here in Branson because that's how our season works here.
Right.
But that gives me opportunity to actually go out like I did this past season and tour the world. Mm-hmm. People say, well, what are you doing? You're in Branson with your show. And I said, yes, but 3 or 4 months a year, I get out on the road and I tour.
You have to.
And then and then I come back to Branson. In fact, my wonderful wife, Tara, who's in the show, she said, came from Zimbabwe, born and raised there her whole life, went to Las Vegas, tried out for my show, made it in my show. And we've been touring for 4 or 5 years. And this last season, we just finished coming back in March. And the moment we landed in Springfield, she said, words out of her mouth, I'm home.
Yeah. But you do have to get out.
Cool. Yeah.
You do have to get out every once in a while. I've been here 11 years. The first few years I said, I'm done with cruise ships. I'm done with touring. I'm just going to enjoy the time off. I went crazy.
Yeah, you can never say no.
I went
you can
crazy.
Never say I'm done with anything.
Are you like me? Like you were saying about the fairs and not wanting to miss a show. I was always petrified that if I missed a show, they would just fill in with somebody else. And it always bothered me because that's how I got my job in Branson. That's how I got my one in the Catskills.
Really?
Somebody kept taking days off.
Yeah.
It was the same guy in both places.
Oh my goodness,
it's really weird.
You know what? It's a funny story, and people may not believe this, but you have to believe it. It's the truth. Last night I had a dream. My show's at 8:00 every evening here right now for these first couple months in Branson. And then it bounces back and forth 2:00 and 8:00 throughout the year. And out of nowhere, I didn't realize, I looked at my calendar yesterday and I have a 2:00 show today.
Right.
And I didn't even know. I told everybody, I told the cast and crew, we have a 2:00 show today. Yeah. So last night I dreamt, I couldn't sleep because I thought, now, I'm not going to sleep all the way till 2:00 in the afternoon, but I kept dreaming, I have a 2:00 show,
yeah.
And I'm like, I can't miss this show. And I had nightmares.
Yeah, that's how I am. If I'm flying out the next day for a cruise or whatever, I can't sleep.
You can't sleep.
Because I'll set 3 alarms.
Yeah.
I even have one that I wear that vibrates. It's an alarm for the deaf.
It's like,
just to be safe.
That's funny. It's like a child wanting to go, whether to an amusement park, Christmas.
Yeah.
They can't sleep that night before. We're going to go to Disneyland.
I still get excited about doing the show, though. That's the weirdest thing. You do a lot of interaction with the audience, a lot of interaction, and I love it. I love it when you get the little kid up there, and a few times you do, but
yes.
The little boy, I just remember, I haven't seen the show this year, but you would get the little boy up and pose him or whatever.
It's one of those things that stays in the show because I know that when I bring a 8 to 10-year-old boy on stage and what we do with that child, it actually changes their life.
Uh-huh.
It's like a life-changing moment that they never forget. I've had boys who are now a lot older come to me and say, I was that kid on stage.
Yeah.
And I don't want to ruin the moment, but most of them say, I should have kissed the girl.
Haven't we all said that?
I give them an opportunity to kiss one of the showgirls, and most 8-year-old boys run off the stage.
Right.
And it's funny because as they grow older, I tell them, I say, you're going to regret that one.
Yeah. That happens. I have the twins now, and I took my son to your show last year. He would have been 3 last year. And we came out, and after a while, we do 400 and some shows a year at the show. But I don't know, you get a little jaded. Some days it feels like work, But he came to your show, and we were watching, just the two of us, and he turned to me, and I don't remember what the routine was, but he turned to me and went, wow. Like this look on his face. I'm like, this is his first show of seeing someone else. Daddy just does it.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't think about it, But then after that, I started realizing how many kids, especially Branson, I bring this up all the time, Vegas. A lot of people go to Vegas regularly. You go, people from Los Angeles might go for the weekend or something. But here in Branson, we get a lot of families that this is the vacation for the whole year, where it might just be for the weekend. And mom and dad saved up, and they might see 3 shows. So you could be one of 3 shows.
The lucky one show.
Well, you know what I mean. It's a little different here, because when I work in Los Angeles or even Miami or Vegas, those people are used to seeing entertainment all the time. And here, this is a big, big deal, for the family to come out and spend the time in Branson and stuff. So you have to remember that sometimes. And it's hard for some of the entertainers. But you were saying about some people getting mad at Copperfield when he was in Russia for that big show. Was that the one where the mafia kept his
Yeah, they kept his equipment.
They
wouldn't let it out of the country.
But you were talking about the video screens. And there was a show here in town. It's not here anymore. And we went to it, and I would say about 60, 70% was on video screens, and it drove me crazy.
Yeah.
Because even at a small theater, I was thinking, I didn't come to watch it on TV. I can do this on YouTube.
That's right.
I don't mind using a screen to enhance what you're doing so people can see everything, but everything was on the screen.
Yeah.
So what do you enjoy doing with your lovely wife here in Branson when do you get much free time? Or?
We do. Right now, we're putting some pretty amazing new things in the show, so I have no life.
Yeah.
Literally, when people think about what it is to put a show together, I commend anybody who puts a show together, let alone magicians. But the extensive work that goes into creating a routine or something that you hope works for the public, it's difficult. And tying it all together and keeping people entertained, truly entertained for 2 hours. You can entertain somebody and the show kind of go up and down, but my show, I never want it to go down. I mean, you need to make sure that every moment the audience is just like, I can't believe those 2 hours just went by. I just enjoy chilling out. We enjoy going to dinner together. We love going to the movies. We like being entertained as well. We like to go to
many shows.
Well, I'm a little jaded with the shows. I've seen, and I don't mean to put it this way, but I think I've seen almost every show in the world.
Yeah.
I mean, being in Vegas and seeing every show there, literally, knowing those people as friends, and traveling the world and having that option to see shows, I've seen shows.
Right.
So when we came to Branson and we began the process of watching every show so that we knew everybody and we knew what was going on in town, it was daunting because people who don't have a grasp of Branson still don't realize there's well over 200 shows here.
I know. And there's a lot to see.
I can't see that many shows.
Yeah, my daughter and I have an older daughter, and we committed one summer we were going to see every single show in Branson. It was impossible.
Yeah, it's
impossible.
impossible.
Was just impossible.
But we're thrilled, and we have some great new friends. And in fact, I actually do go back to Vegas this weekend, and I'm checking up on our new effect. We magicians, we make things appear and vanish all the time. And you may think it's, no big deal. Any magician can make something appear on stage. And, I've seen that appear before or whatever. So it's what you do with those illusions that makes it grand.
Right.
I'll watch people who may have money and put a show together, but it doesn't mean that you have a show.
Right.
I have a line that says anybody can do a trick, but very few people can perform magic.
There you go.
So I created this new sequence where one of the biggest pieces of my show, which is the littlest piece of my show, is my linking rings. I have more people say, don't ever take the rings out of your show. For some reason, I mastered the linking rings when I was very young, and for some reason, it's just a beautiful piece in my show. Whether you've seen it before, I can promise you when you see it, it's stunning.
Yeah, it is.
So I thought to myself, why don't I take the rings and really go high end? How do you do high end? Now, I don't want to ruin it for you, but you guys be prepared because it's going to hit you right between the eyes.
Yeah.
I finished the linking rings on this new beautiful stage that I've built. It's a miniature stage on a grand stage. And in front of you, without any preparation whatsoever, I make a helicopter appear. Once the helicopter has appeared, we then proceed with the show. And later in the production, I bring somebody from the audience on stage and strap that person back in the same helicopter and make both that person and the helicopter vanish. Now, the great part about it is I didn't make something appear and then close a curtain. Mm-hmm. I didn't make something else appear and then go on with that. I love to make things a little bit more elaborate. I like to do things beyond what's supposed to be done with them as a magician,
right,
and take it one step further. And when I turn to that person's spouse and ask them if they want to leave things as is or bring them back, it's an hysterical moment in the show. And we in magic call it a running gag, mm-hmm. and that's what it's become. So the helicopter in my show literally takes up, in some way or form, the second half of my show, which to me has taken me well over a year and a half to create. Mm-hmm. Because I didn't want to just make something appear on stage and go, ta-da.
Yeah, right.
And it has to have some depth to it. And the feelings behind it and the work and the creation and all that tied together is, and I can promise you, something that they have never seen any entertainer do before.
Yeah.
And it's a one of a kind.
When's it going to be in the show, do you think?
We're looking at about 2 weeks.
2 weeks?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was going to be longer. And this will be available on Penguin Magic? No.
Well, the builders who are building it for me, we have 4 different companies come together to build this piece because it's epic.
Uh-huh.
And one of the guys who finished out his part of the project last week, he goes, every magician in the world is going to want this.
Right.
What are you selling it for? I said, it's not for sale. He goes, oh, I know. It's a Rick Thomas illusion. But he says, you know that everybody, when they see it, they're going to go out and they're going to try. Mm-hmm. And that's what happened in Vegas. I'm very proud to say that we have a lot of people in the world doing things because they saw Rick Thomas perform his show in Las Vegas.
Yeah. That's a bit of a problem here.
It's a problem.
It's a problem here in Branson, not just with magic, but when I first came here, I hadn't seen anything. I did my show. I had a lot of my own stuff that I wrote. And the very first week, somebody said, oh, they're going to love your show downtown. You just gave everybody all this new material to do.
It's going on on right now with my show in this town.
It's very frustrating. I have somebody that because I do my own routines as well. You know, like a lot of magicians, I'll find a gimmick.
Yeah.
And then I figure out how to make that work in my story.
Your way.
A lot of my magicians don't understand that. It's very, very frustrating to me. And I call these guys cover band magicians that will just take somebody's routine and try it, or right from the book or the video now. And it's so frustrating to me because I spend so much time working on this. And the best part is there are a few magicians in this area that will see my show and will do my lines, do my act, and it makes no sense for them, for their character, for their persona at all.
Yeah. I've gotten phone calls, and these people listening to this may go, what are you guys talking about? But people will call me and say, I just saw the Rick Thomas show starring such and such. Somebody and I go, and they do it because they know. They see it, and they go, the blood, sweat, and tears and everything that you put into something. They'll say, oh, it's flattering.
It's not flattering to me. It's not flattering to me. Or someone will say to me, well, so-and-so is an amazing entertainer. Everybody loves them. Yeah. And I say, well, of course he is. He takes the best from everybody. Yeah. And he does a little bit of the best. And I have someone that does this regularly to me, and it's a running gag on my show. I will bring it up, and I'm always told, oh, it's flattery. And I don't buy that. And I try to explain, I have a routine that I do in my show. I've honed it over 10 years. And if he is doing a very poor version of it, which they'll even admit, his isn't as good as you. I said, what if by chance he appears on some television show or the Magic Castle or what if by chance he does this poor version of it, and then I get the chance to appear in a similar venue, and I try to do that, and they'll say, well, that's so-and-so's.
That's what happened in Branson. Mm-hmm. When I got here my first season, one of the critics said, Rick Thomas came to Branson, wonderful production, whatever, but he should do his homework and make sure he doesn't do anything that we've seen that somebody else is doing here.
Right.
And I wrote him and said, by the way, so you know, it's my illusion. I created it.
Yeah.
I built it. I created it. I was the first person to perform it in the world. And the people here in Branson saw it. They recreated it and built it out here. And just because I come out here, it's my piece.
Right.
I'm going to do my illusion.
Right.
And they didn't know, because that's the exact same story. They saw somebody else do it first, thinking that Rick Thomas was the duplicator.
Yes.
So,
and no matter what you try to do, you can't convince them.
well, I'll tell you,
so
of course, there's another illusion in my show. And did you see it last year? I think last season,
so.
Where I do Aerodage, dancing in the air.
Yes.
Yeah. That is something that few, if any person, will ever copy.
Right.
They can't.
Yeah.
They can't. We had a lady last week come in and say, we just saw Peter Pan on Broadway. And she said, why can't they do what I just saw Rick Thomas do? And I said, you just answered it. I'm Rick Thomas.
Yeah, right.
It's and I did it in the humblest of way, because my Aerodage took me years to create and conceive with modern magic technology, but do it my way.
Right.
My way. No one can even get near it because it's so interwoven into my dancing career. And just for those who are listening, Aerodage is what it is an adage is an adagio team, where in a show there's always a couple that come out on stage, and the man lifts the woman in the air, and they do this amazing dance number, and he lifts her and moves around, and it's called adagio. So I decided to do that, but I do it in the air, not on the ground, but actually floating in the air. So we call it Aerodage.
Yeah, it's very, very creative. I love it.
So.
And with your linking rings, the same sort of thing. You take a classic routine or a classic concept and just change it. I think we have some mutual friends, Farrell Dillon. Do you know Farrell?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Farrell does the thimbles throughout his show, kind of a running gag. But if somebody told me I'm going to go see this magician, you should see his thimble act, I would say, what is wrong with you? Like, what? I don't even know what a thimble is really for.
Yeah, right.
But when he takes that simple concept and changes it and has it as a running gag in his show, I think it's genius.
Yeah.
And so it's nice to meet creative people like you and Farrell, the other people I've got to meet through the show that are working hard, and we want to tell people, do your own stuff.
Get your own stuff. Stop using my lines.
Really, seriously.
And trying so hard to.
Yeah.
I don't know.
There's nothing you can do about it, and it's very, very frustrating.
Oh my goodness.
Especially here in Branson. I mean, we have a lot of shows opening up, and I every time I see one, I just I think that you've got it. Like, you're here, you got a great backing with Jimmy and the theater and stuff here, and I think it's kind of foolish when I see some of them actually come to town, because you're so popular here. I've never heard a bad thing. I was talking to CJ from the Patsy Cline show the other day, and I was telling her I do a game show that's all improv at our theater, and I asked them what they have done in Branson. What are 3 things that you've done in Branson as a tourist? And so they always list it. You come up a lot, by the way. And even if they don't, I make suggestions, and I always suggest your magic show.
Oh, thank you.
Here at the theater. I tell them that any show here at the theater is great. So,
yeah.
But you've definitely got it going, and I want to thank you for talking with us. And it's so nice to meet you, and I can't wait to bring my son out and see this new illusion. So I want to get my wife in the helicopter.
Well, you know what? Join the list. It's out front, right where you buy the tickets, and then you just put their name down, and we're creating a whole list.
Oh, you know what? Real quick, as a magician here in town, do you? I'm sure you do. You always get the same thing. Can you make my wife disappear?
Yes.
And what are some of the other ones? Can you saw my wife in half? And I used to have a little notebook, and I would have little hash marks, and I'd be like, "Oh, I've almost did 100 today." But my gag at the showboat, when they ask me, "Can you make my wife disappear?" I'm like, "It's a boat. Like, I can make anybody disappear. Right. We just have to come back with the same
Vegas,
number."
My line was, "It's a big desert." And I'm not. Don't try to be morbid, but I mean, you have to. They're the ones who asked you to make them disappear.
Yeah, it's kind of a terrible thing.
Yeah, it's a big desert.
That's funny. Well, thank you so much for talking with me, and I can't wait to see your show again. Come out to the Moon River Theater and see the Rick Thomas show. 2 o'clock or 8 o'clock right now. Check the website.
Yeah,
right?
Please check the website, because I don't even know.
What's the website?
You remember? Yes, let's see. AndyWilliams.com.
There you go.
Yeah, I believe it is. That's or you know, all you have to do is just remember the name Andy Williams, Andy Williams Theater, and you'll find it.
Yeah, he became a big performer.
Yeah, he's somebody you should remember.
So thanks a lot for joining us at All Things Branson. Go to the website allthingsbranson.com. Follow us on iTunes and Twitter at All Branson. Thanks for listening. Bye.